Deafrowe with Deafrowe TV, and I'm back again with another review. And this week is episode 2 of one of my favorite all time miniseries called Jekyll. But before I get started on this review of episode 2, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Hit that notification bell so you can see episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 when I come out with them eventually. So let's get started on episode 2 of Jekyll, starring none other than James Nesbitt as Dr. Tom Jackman, aka Dr. Hyde, aka Mr. Hyde. Yeah. So where we left off was he was basically telling Mr. Hyde off, saying, "Hey, don't come near my family again," and all this other stuff, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a recap of where Mr. Hyde had met up at his house to see the two kids and everything like that, and kind of review over everything that was going on before. And we cut back to we jump back 6 weeks prior to when let's see, Catherine was first coming on and her first night with Mr. Hyde. And at first she doesn't believe what she's seeing in front of her, and she's just like, "You know who I am, you just saw me." And he's like, "No, I don't know who you are." And so Mr. Hyde, he's sitting there, it's like, "You need to tell me what you're here for and everything else, or I'm going to kill you." Pitch, and like, for every question that he can tell whether she's lying or not. And he can tell by the way her heart is beating whether she's lying about the answer she gives or not. And she's like, "You either don't answer or you tell me the truth. I'd rather you not answer than try to lie to me. But don't ever lie to me," because he can tell. So finally, she admits that it's a completely different person that she's talking to. His eyes are darker. He's a little bit taller. The hairline's a little bit further back. Jawline's a little different. And most of this is just from James Nesbitt's acting, to be honest with you. The way he's able to change the way he looks like this is insane. The obvious hairdo and the contact lens and that kind of thing help a little bit too, but the facial expressions all him, and how he's able to make his jaw look like that is insane. Uh, so yes, he like I said, he tells her, "I'd rather you keep the secret than try to tell me a lie, because if you're gonna lie to me, then I'm gonna be mad and I'm not gonna like you." And so she just decides not to answer the questions that she doesn't want to lie about. And he's like, "Now you're getting it." He's like, "I could tell when you're lying just about based on your heartbeat and everything else." And so she unlocks, because she's the only one that has the code to the chair, unlocks for him to let him out, and has him agree with everything in accordance with uh, Tom Jackman's Dr. Tom Jackman's agreements, because she plays him like the dictaphone, and it's basically Tom Jackman explaining to Mr. Hyde who she is, why she's there, and all this stuff. And like, if you agree with this, we'll go forward with it. And so he kind of agrees with it. So, see, she doesn't think he's that much of a threat, but then the look on his face is completely different. And then when he does this, I mean, he's nuts. So now we're fast forward 6 weeks later. We're back to our current position, and Dr. Tom Jackman wakes up in a bathroom in a restaurant somewhere. Thinking he had thinking that Mr. Hyde had like a hot date or something, and so he's going out there to pay, and then dude's like, yeah, you already paid and everything. And he's like, oh, okay. That's fine. I guess I'll go. And then, like, there's nothing on the dictaphone to tell him anything. So he's like, well, shoot, what am I supposed to do? So he has to go outside and start hitting the key fob to figure out where his car is, because Mr. Hyde doesn't give him any messages about where his car is. And at first, he's not able to find the keys to the apartment, and he's knocking on the door to get her to answer. And she's like explaining to him he's left-handed, so he puts the keys in his left pocket. He never thinks to check the left pocket because Dr. Tom Chapman is right-handed. And she's like explaining all these little different things about him. And she goes on to say, "Have you been drinking?" And he's like, "No, but he has." It's like, "Yeah, but you're also liable because your body it's your body. He put the alcohol in." And he's like, "Oh crap, I didn't think of it that way." Anyway, so he questions Catherine about what Mr. Hyde's been up to with this date and all this other stuff. And at this point, Catherine is giving him his tea as he's sitting in his chair, and she drugs him, knocking him out. And she does this because she wants to find something in the apartment that will help her prove something. At first, as you're watching this, you think she's part of the whole scheme of the black van people. That's what I'm calling them right now because I don't really have a name yet. Anyway, the black van people are. You think she's colluding with them, but she's really just trying to find more information on him and see what's going on, or like who he really is. And he finds the letter in the box. She finds the letter in his box under his bed, verifying the information that she has on him. And so she's like, okay, well, in order to get into his room and do everything that she was wanting to do, to turn the cameras off and erase the data, so Dr. Tom Chapman doesn't find out what she's done. But what she doesn't realize was when she knocked out Dr. Jackman, Hyde woke up. And Hyde is playing the cat and mouse game in the apartment with her. And he's pissed off because he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I have a beautiful woman, a locked door, and soundproof walls. What are you going to do? And so he's playing a little bit of cat and mouse with her to the point that she becomes so scared she just gets up underneath the desk and hides. And then Mr. Hyde just basically tells her, he's like, tell me who you're working for, why you're doing this, and I won't do anything to you. And so she finally gives up all the information on what she's been doing. And then we come back to Benjamin Lennox here, who is one of the black van people. I don't have a company or corporate name yet in this movie, in this show, so I'm just going to call them the black van people at this point. Now, I have seen this show before, but I don't want to give away too much stuff. So I'm just going along with these episodes as I watch them, as if I had just first watched them. And he's talking to an unknown person on the phone, who's apparently his boss. And he's trying to convince this boss that, hey, we got to act now in getting Mr. Tom Chapman. Because by our estimate, he won't be around much longer, and we'll end up having to wait another 100 years to find another Dr. Tom Chapman that has this Mr. Hyde in him. And so whoever the person is over the phone gives him the go-ahead to do this operation, and this operation is like, we're going to go to the zoo. At this point, Tom Chapman's 41, and what he's saying, by their estimate, he doesn't have much time left, and they got to do something now. Because the last Jekyll and Hyde passed away at the age of 43. And so that's what he's, that's finally what is convinced him. Anyway, then we come back to Catherine, and she's talking to Dr. Tom Jackman, and she's glad to see that he's back, and blah blah blah. And she's kind of like he's brushing off everything, and Tom Jackman doesn't have any clue what had happened when he went under like that, and Mr. Hyde took over. Anyway, so he goes on his merry way. He has an appointment with his wife and kids today, and he brings along his best friend, which is Peter Syme, which is played by Dennis Lawson. And he's there with his wife, and he's like, I've been trying to. And this is supposedly why, like, an ex boss that's trying to get him to come back to work for him, but he's trying everything he can to get him to come back. Anyway, Mister uh, Peter Syme here, Mister Syme, whatever you want to call him, he decides to go with him to the zoo just because I figured that's a way to, you know, get into his head or whatever. Anyway, the twins are sitting at this table, and the one twin has a runny nose or whatever, and he's like telling him to wipe his nose. And then all of a sudden, he like does this little bit right here. I'm gonna see if I can catch it. And see, he's confused because he doesn't know what just happened. Because he shouted at the kid with the runny nose to wipe your nose, like. And it freaks the kid out, like, big time. Let's see, let's see if I can catch that a little bit. The kid don't want to wipe his nose, basically. And then, like, and this part right here. And just screams, "For you, for God's sake, wipe your nose!" And it's just like his whole expression changes as he's looking at his kid like that, and he's like trying to figure. And everybody's like, and Dr. Tom Jackman, he doesn't realize what just happened. So he goes to the bathroom. He's looking in the mirror, and he's like, "Are you awake? Are we awake at the same time?" And I think, and you start to realize when as you're watching the show is the drug that Catherine had given them to, or had given Tom Jackman to knock him out, is having a side effect with his connection to Mr. Hyde, and it's messing up the balance. And Mr. Hyde is awake at the same time that Dr. Jackman is, and so that's what he's experiencing is the side effect from what has happened. But it's it's starting to come in. They don't. The people in the black van people don't know this what's happening, and so the now the Operation Zoo is underway. And what's happened here is Dr. Tom Jackman knows something's up, is going on at the zoo, and he's acting a little bit paranoid. And even the kids like, "What does paranoid mean?" Is like, "Cause where you think everybody's out to get you." And then you see this one little scene where they're walking into the zoo, and as they're walking into the zoo, he sees one black van, right? So the black van people are there. He knows they are. He sees two, and he thinks he's just being paranoid. But then as they're walking away, right here, you see about four of them showing off, and it's like, "No, you ain't paranoid, dude. They coming for you." And so yeah, that's so the whole point in this exercise right here is his friend Peter Syme right here is trying to get him to open up about what's going on. He's like, "I've known you since since you were however old. I know for a fact that you don't have any family. I don't know anything about this cousin that you're talking about. That ain't your cousin, is it?" And so he's trying to get him to open up a little bit. And at the time, you know, the twins are looking at the wolves or whatever, and Eddie's still having the issue with his runny nose. And so Benjamin, in his infinite wisdom, decides to use the one with the runny nose as a bait to lure out Mr. Hyde. So, and he's doing this based on the information from the man on the inside, and the man on the inside, you find out pretty soon here, is none other than Mr. Syme, Peter Syme. And you find out there's a lot of nefarious things going on in Dr. Tom Jackman's life that he has no control over. And so in this experiment, the black van people, I guess that's what I'm calling them, have bought the zoo outright entirely. They have so much money, they just went ahead and bought the zoo. And in this experiment, they kidnap one of the kids, the snot nosed runny one, and they put him in with the lions. And at this time, Mr. Hyde, he answers the phone. He thinks he's talking to Catherine, you know, on the phone, but it's not Catherine. It's actually Mr. Hyde just doing her voice and messing with him at first. And Mr. Hyde finally chimes in and is like, "Look, I'm talking to you through this phone. Act like you're talking on the phone, so it doesn't look like we're crazy and you're just talking to yourself, basically." So like, hey, talk to me. And he looks down at the phone and realizes the phone's off. He's not talking to anybody. He's just talking to Mr. Hyde in his head. And so Mr. Hyde's trying to tell him like, hey, something's up. I can feel it in my blood. There's something happened with the drug, and it's basically keeping Mr. Hyde awake, even though he doesn't want to be. And Mr. Hyde's feeding him information about what's going on around him. And Mr. Hyde is piecing information. Like, Mr. Hyde has abilities that Dr. Jack, Tom, I can't say his name. Dr. Jackman doesn't have. He can pull memories from him. He can feel things in his blood. He can feel heartbeats. Though, I mean, he's got all this extra power. And Mr. Hyde is feeding the information to Dr. Jackman. And that's when you realize the boy is inside the lion's den. The lion's cage, basically. And he's like, holy crap, what's going on? He's like, why would you do that? And so he's rushing over to the bodyguard dude, Christopher, which was the one that was messing with Mr. Hyde earlier, that was running around with Benjamin. And he's looking at Christopher's like, what are you doing? Why'd you put my kid in there? And all this whole thing. And he's getting kind of pissed off. It's like, he's like, I got to get in there and help my son. And Benjamin's like, I'll take responsibility for any mistakes today. And so that's when all of a sudden Dr. Tom Jackman finally gives over to Mr. Hyde. Yeah. As you can see there, I was trying to catch that. Dr. Tom Jackman gives over to Mr. Hyde and lets him take control in order to save his son. And Mr. Hyde jumps in and roars back at the lion and pretty much becomes like the alpha inside the lion's cage. As you can see here, crazy looking teeth and everything. And so by doing that, and then he throws the alpha lion outside the cage onto their van that they're sitting in. He's able to throw the damn lion outside the cage and onto their van with that much strength. And they're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do now? And yeah, he's a little pissed. And they're like, yeah, he just threw a line over the freaking wall. Don't have to do anything he likes at this moment. And so that's when Benjamin goes in to talk to him. And Mr. Hyde's up on top of the thing inside the cage, just, basically singing In the Jungle, the song from the Lion King. The whole song. So Benjamin, like, goes to the door, and he's like, I'm just going to stay here at the door and talk to you. And of course, the kid's unharmed, obviously. And he's like, Mr. Hyde, you saved your kid. And he's like, I don't really care about saving the kid, but he means a lot to Dr. Jackman, so I did what he asked. And yeah, as you can see here, he might have taken a bite out of the line a little bit there. And he's basically telling Benjamin, have you ever murdered something? You never ever killed anything? It's like sex, only there's a winner. He's scared as shit of him right now. Anyway. And Mr. Hyde even says, which one of you guys put my son in here? And he's like, oh, it's Christopher. I remember Christopher. That's the one he threw out the window in the first episode. And Benjamin goes on to tell him, like, look, he's like, we've controlled every part of your life from the beginning to end, even though you were found, sick when you're at a railway station. When you're only 6 months old, we've been controlling everything that's happened to you ever since then. That's how powerful we are. Just like we bought this, we bought this, bought this zoo just so we could do this to get you. And of course, none of this worked, and of course, Mr. Hyde wakes up in this abandoned place, I guess you could say, and he's got Christopher tied up. He's like, you put my son in a cage with lions. Why would you do? He's like, forget Hyde. I don't need Hyde. All I got to do is pick up the phone. He picks up the phone. Phone's not. The phone is not hooked to anything, and he's actually talking to Mr. Hyde. And Mr. Hyde finally says that, look, let me take care of Christopher. I won't kill him, but I will send a message. And he said, either I send him a message, or I hope you're strong enough to bury one of your children. And that's when Dr. Jackman kind of gives in to Mr. Hyde and lets him do his thing, and he ends up just like basically taking Christopher to the edge of basically killing him, almost killing him, gouged his eyes out, everything, broke all his bones, and basically dropped him off at a hospital in a freaking bag like this right here, like a badass Mr. Hyde is. But, jackass put a kid in a lion's cage. And he just drops off. He's still alive, though. He didn't kill him. No murder. And leaves his ass at the hospital in a bag. Then we finally find out who the woman was that he was having that so-called date with. And he wasn't having a date with anybody. And it's who Catherine is actually working for. You find out that Catherine is not really working for the Black Van people. She's actually working for none other than what would be considered Dr. Jackman's mom, which is she's the lady, she claims to be the lady that left the baby at the railway station at 6 months old. And then we cut back to Dr. Tom Jackman. He's waking up again, and he calls up Mr. Syme, He basically goes to the hospital to check up on Christopher to make sure that he's alive. He is alive, but he's in such bad shape that he probably probably wish he was dead. But part of me, for personally, part of me, thinks anybody that's willing to just put a damn kid in a freaking lion's cage with 4 or 5 lions and just use them as bait, well, you kind of lose your. I don't give a shit about you no more. And Mr. Hyde kind of made him wish that he was dead, that he hurt him so bad. Anyway, he calls Mr. Syme. He's like, I want to finally tell you everything. Just get down to the hospital real quick. I got to tell you everything that's going on. But before Mr. Syme could get down there, that's when Dr. Tom Chapman's mother finally shows up to talk to him. And she goes, at first, he thinks that it's Christopher's mom, but it's not. It's his. And he starts talking to her, and she's like, "No, you got to go. You got to get out of here because they're coming for you." Mr. Syme is one of the guys that works for the Black Fan people. He is part of the whole program from the very. The only way I could describe it is his life has been pretty much been predetermined by this corporation that owns these black vans, the Black Van people. So yeah. And his mother's trying to tell him what happened to Christopher. He's blind in both eyes, deaf in both ears. Almost every bone in his body is broken. Yeah, he probably wishes he was dead now. You put a kid in a lion's cage. I mean, I kind of don't feel sorry for you, huh? Sorry. You can't put any more kids in a lion's cage, and you're not dead technically. So Mr. Hyde kept his part of the deal. He didn't kill him. Anyway, so she tells him, like, no, you got to get out of here because you just called Mr. Syme here. And, yeah, see, good work, Mr. Syme. And Mr. Syme's letting Benjamin know, like, hey, we got a lead on him. He's at the hospital right now. We got to get down there and get him. And so they start heading down there. And that's when you figure out that Mr. Syme, Benjamin, all these people are in all this together. And she's trying to tell him it's and like I said, the only way I could describe it is almost like his whole life is the Truman Show, and this corporation has been steering him in a direction that he's in all his life, waiting for this Jekyll Hyde transition to happen. They've been monitoring and making sure he hasn't had a very hard life and all this other stuff, and everything's happened to him in a certain way, and he's not really like in a Truman Show where he's like in a studio, the big ass studio or whatever. But they pretty much have monitored and controlled his entire life, or the direction his life has gone his entire life ever since they found him at 6 months old at a railway station where she left him. And that's what she's trying, and she kind of alludes like, I am your mom and I'm about the closest thing to your mom there is. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. What are you trying to say? Are you my mom or not my mom? What's going on here? And she's like, it's more complicated than that and all this other stuff. And you know and she tells him that Peter Syme, his best friend, is part of the whole project. He wasn't really your friend. He's just somebody to another surveillance partner in the whole ordeal. And so she's like, don't contact anyone anymore. Just disappear. And then Mr. Syme and the rest of them show up, and she's like, oh, I'm surprised you don't recognize me. I know I've gotten a little bit older, but I still sort of look similar. Mr. Syme's like, holy crap, it's you. And he realizes who she is and takes her instead of trying to go after Dr. Tom Chapman at this point. And of course, they got her locked up in a little secure facility, wanting to question her. And it goes back. It goes back to the whole ordeal, and she's like trying to explain to him that Mr. Hyde will only get stronger, you get weaker. And then Dr. Tom Jackson, I won't ever stop fighting him. I can't stop fighting him. I have 2 kids and a wife I have to look after. I can't stop fighting him. I have to make something happen for both of us. I have to make it work. And so then they cut back to Benjamin and Mr. Syme coming back, and the woman is missing in the secure room all of a sudden. Yeah. So yeah, they come back to check on the woman, and somehow she has escaped the room, and they don't really understand how because you can only get in through a thumbprint, and she's gone. How in the hell did she get out of there? So, and then they finally cut to Dr. Tom Chapman. He's talking to somebody over the phone one last time. I believe it's he's basically saying to what's her face is like, I have a wife, I have children, I don't have time to die, I have to make this work. So he's like drinking his coffee and drinking his 24-hour energy pills or some sort. That's going, basically he's going to make himself stay awake now so he can fight. Because what he's figured, I think what his line of thinking is if he stays awake long enough, he's gonna fight him and burn him out. Basically, is what he's wanting to do. But yeah, and so let me go back here because there's one part he was talking. He basically throws his cell phone into the garbage and then walks off towards the end of this episode. Dr. Tom Chapman does, and that is pretty much the end of this episode too. And he does his face like he's like in between. It's like an in between face almost if you look at it real close. And it's basically that transition face. It's hard to, how he does that. I don't know. It was damn good actor doing that. But yeah, that's the end of episode 2 in my review of episode 2. Stay tuned for episode 3 coming up next week. And like I said, check out my credit list score. I give this one a whole 100% because I love this show. It's been a while since I watched it, so I am loving it even more rewatching it now because there's things that I've forgotten about the show that I'm relearning about the show as I'm watching it and reviewing it with you people. So, yeah, hit that notification bell so you can see episode 3. Like, subscribe, and share. And that is me, Deafrowe, out.